Hello, Guidance 3, and welcome to Interviewing Strategically. We are kind of winding down the class. We're kind of getting to the finish line here. And I think finishing or almost finishing with the Interviewing Strategically really kind of ties everything in a nice little bow in terms of the work that we've been doing. You have already handed in your resumes and your cover letters, and both of those things are designed to help you land an interview. And then this presentation will be designed to help you crush the interview so you can actually get that position that you might be looking for, put that on your resume and start building towards whatever your end goal is. Okay, so we have a lot to get through today, so let's get right into it. Okay, as always, we're going to talk about interviewing today, some different kind of skills that you can use, but first we kind of need to operationally define what an interview is, right? Let's break down what an interview is. So essentially what happens is an interview is usually broken down into some different components, okay? And I think that kind of breaking it down into different components and different segments helps us to kind of not only understand the different segments, but plan on how we're going to attack those different segments of the interview, okay? So although every interview is different, they're generally divided into 4 segments, okay? In segment 1, it's really devoted to building a connection and a rapport with the person that's interviewing you. So a lot of the times when you first walk into an interview, if any of you have interviewed before, you kind of understand this. If you haven't, this is exactly why we're doing this. First portion of the interview is kind of some general pleasantries, right? So, hey, how you doing? How's your day going? You know, I'm sure you're very busy. What's the weather like? Ray. Those types of things, right? In this segment of the interview, it's really important that you give yourself an opportunity to relax and kind of enjoy this portion of the interview, right? This is for you to kind of relax, find your seating, find your footing, breathe, and kind of, you know, build a rapport with the person that's interviewing you or the people that are interviewing you, right? Obviously, in this portion, there's no right or wrong answers because no questions have been asked yet. So it's really an opportunity for you to allow the interviewer to kind of see a little bit of your personality. You guys don't necessarily have to do this, but the one thing that I always do, or I used to do when I used to go into interviews, is I used to try to start it off with some type of icebreaker, right? Some type of joke. Maybe I'll make a little joke about something. Maybe if there was a big game the other night, I'll ask a question of if anybody saw the game. If there was a big show on, if the Grammys or something was on, I'd maybe kind of bring something up like that, just to kind of allow your anxiety level to go down, and also for them to see a little bit of your personality, right? That you're not just a robot that's coming in here looking for a job, that you're also somebody that, you know, is kind of like fun loving and has a bit of a fun loving nature. Okay. In segment 2, this is really when we get into like the meat and potatoes of the interview, right? So this is where you're going to have the when, where, and why questions that are kind of related to your background. And when I say background, I don't necessarily mean like your childhood and your, you know, your upbringing. When I say background, I kind of mean like your professional experience, your academic experience, right? What's the when, where, and why that's related to why you're here and what you can bring to this company. Okay. They're going to talk about your previous experience, right? In segment 3, what happens is that the interviewer is going to try to attempt to determine how your skills and your personality may fit within the company. Okay. And so really what I think this part of the interview is getting at is kind of something different than the actual position. What I mean by that is this: anytime that you're interviewing for a position, you're always essentially kind of interviewing for 2 things. One, you need to be a good fit for the position, right? So do you have the experience? Do you have the education? Do you have the background to be able to perform the tasks of the job? But the second thing that we kind of need to do is also be a good fit for the company, right? For the culture of the company, right? So for example, if you are somebody that's, you know, happy-go-lucky, a little bit more fun-loving, and you're walking into a culture that is very serious and very rigid, this might not be the best fit for you. So even though on paper you might be able to do all the tasks of the job, maybe better than other folks, you might not be as good of a fit for the culture, right? And vice versa. If you're somebody that is a little bit more rigid, doesn't really like to socialize, want to get in there, get my work done and get out, and you're walking into a culture that's a little bit more fun loving, again, that might not just be a good fit for the company. So I think it's always it's always important to be mindful of those things, right? It's not just about being a good fit for the position, but also being a good fit for the overall culture of the company that you're working for, right? Or that you're applying to. And again, you're not necessarily going to know what that culture is going in. So I think the most important thing is to be yourself. right? Can never lose doing that. Okay. In this section, they may also talk about the company and the available position, right? So they might tell you a little bit about the company. Hopefully, we would have already researched the company, so we know most of this stuff, and tell you a little bit more about the position that you wouldn't have been able to find in the job description itself. Okay. Finally, segment 4, the end of the interview. This is an opportunity for you to find out, when you can expect a final decision. So when you can expect them to make a decision on whether or not it's you or another candidate. It's also the opportunity for you to add any information that you may have left out in the interview, right? So a lot of the times what happens is that you'll prepare for an interview and you'll be ready to talk about X, Y, and Z. And if they don't ask X, Y, and Z, you don't have an opportunity to show them some of those things that might be important in terms of helping you have an opportunity to get the job. And so this might be where you add that information, right? So you might say something like, well, just to reiterate, I think my strongest strengths are communication and collaboration, and these are the ways in which I've exhibited these strengths, right? This is also an opportunity for you to maybe ask any questions of them. Okay, we're going to get to that a little bit later, but I also think it's important that 9 times out of 10 in the interview, they're going to give you an opportunity to ask them any questions, and they're going to say, hey, do you guys have any questions for us? And I think it's always important to say yes and ask a couple questions. Normally at this point of the interview, you're maybe a little bit nervous. You've gotten to the end, you just want to get out of Dodge, right? They say, hey, do you have any questions for us? And you go, nope, bye, see you later, and you scurry out, right? And leave a trail of dust behind you. But I think it's important to have an opportunity to ask a couple questions, and mainly because it puts you in the driver's seat, right? This is the first part of the interview where you get to kind of be in control. And also, and we've talked about this in previous presentations, but also I think it's important that you make sure that this is the right place for you to work, right? And so maybe asking a couple of questions to see if this is the right culture for you, if this is the right company for you, if this is the right fit for you, is worth your time, right? I understand that they're interviewing you because you're trying to get a job, but you should also be interviewing them as well. And that last portion there, when they ask you if you have any questions for them, that's your opportunity to do that. Because if it's not a good fit for you, then let's get back to the drawing board. Let's apply for jobs using the resume and the cover letter, and let's try to find something that's a better fit, okay? In terms of interview formats and interview settings, there are a couple different kind of settings, a couple different formats that I think is just important to know on the front end, okay? Oftentimes, the most standard interview setting would be on-site at a company location. So you will apply to T-Mobile, and T-Mobile would say, hello, Shelly, we love you, we loved your resume, and we'd like you to come in for an interview. And you're going to come in at this location, right? Again, that might be changing with the way of the world and everybody's moving into Zoom. But normally that's what would happen, is an on-site at a company location for an interview, okay? The second one would be a phone interview. Okay. Oftentimes what will happen is that companies, because they'll have, let's say they have 200 applicants for a particular job, they'll start off with a phone interview to cut that 200 down to maybe 15. And then they'll invite that 15 for a standard interview that you see above. Okay. For telephone interviews, a couple of things to kind of be mindful of. Most of you probably don't have a landline unless you are 1,000 years old like me. If you have a landline, maybe try to use it, right? Just because you know that you're not going to have to worry about calls dropping, or if you have some dead spots in your house or something. If you are using a cell phone, totally fine. I would encourage you to do a couple of little things and a couple of little tricks that I think are helpful. One, use headphones, okay? Bluetooth headphones preferably, because that allows you to keep your hands free, right? You can write down notes if you need to, but use a headphones if you can, just so that you're not having to hold your phone up against your ear, right? The other reason why I like to have headphones is this. Most of us, when we talk, we use our hands, right? When you're trying to explain something, you use your hands to explain, right? It's kind of a way that you emote, right? And if you're holding your phone to your face, you don't get a chance to kind of use your hands to kind of be free, be loose, lessen that anxiety level, and really explain through the things that you need to explain for your interview. So if possible, use headphones or Bluetooth headphones to conduct this interview, okay? And just make sure that you're in a quiet place, obviously, so your little brother or little sister or something isn't, screaming in the background, or your dog's not trying to chew at your leg or something like that. Okay, online. This kind of seems like the direction where things are going. So again, if you're going to do an online interview via Zoom or FaceTime or something like that, just make sure that you have a functioning webcam. Make sure that your internet signal is strong, right? And make sure that you're in a place, be mindful of what's behind you, right? You don't want to maybe do this interview with a bunch of dirty laundry in the background, right? So just be mindful of your surroundings and what's behind you, and make sure you're in an area that's well lit, so they can kind of see you. Okay. In terms of interview formats are different than settings, right? So formats, you'll have a one-on-one interview. Okay. A one-on-one interview is you, the interviewee, and the interviewer, the person interviewing you, right? So oftentimes that'll happen where it's just the two of you, and you are going in there to advocate on your behalf to be able to do the job correctly. Okay. The second one is a committee interview. In a committee interview, what that means, it's you as the interviewee and several interviewers. So maybe more than one. Okay. One of the first jobs that I applied for in counseling at East Los Angeles College, I remember I had 17 people on my committee. So it was me and 17 people just looking back at me. And I was interviewing for all of them. Okay. And one of the most important things when you have a committee interview is making sure that you look at everybody, right? If any of you are taking like speech classes or communication classes, you'll know that they always say, like, look at your audience, right? Don't look down and just read your paper. And making sure that you're looking at everybody so everybody feels that you're including them and that you're only talking to them. Super duper important. Okay. So one-on-one, just you and the interviewer, committee, yourself and several interviewers. And then the last one is group. Group interviews is you're going to be normally one interviewer and several interviewees. So it might be you and 6 or 7 other folks, trying to compete for maybe 1 or 2 positions and only one person asking questions, right? A lot of the times this happens for entry-level jobs, maybe in customer service or fast food or something. I know a lot of students that I've worked with, they might have an interview like this at, a fast food restaurant, right? And in this format of interview, it's really important to do a couple things. One, you want to assert yourself enough that you're answering questions, right? Because you don't want to just kind of sink into the background and fall by the wayside. But you also don't want to speak so much that you're not giving other people a chance to speak, because then you look a little like a bully, right? So trying to find that middle ground of that group interview is really something to be mindful of if that's the format in which you are interviewing. Okay, really, really important. Okay, planning and preparation. When agreeing to an interview, you all should be writing this down. When agreeing to an interview, a couple of things to be mindful of. First, be aware of any time conflicts. This is super important. Normally what happens is somebody from HR will call you and say, hey, we got your application. We'd like to bring you in for an interview. And oftentimes we are so excited to say yes that we just say yes without thinking or considering when this interview is, right? So if you agree to something for 2 weeks from now, you don't want to have to call back and be like, ooh, yeah, I actually had a dentist appointment that I didn't know about, right? So just be aware of any time conflicts. And it's okay to take your time and, maybe even say like, hey, I just want to make sure that I'm clear. Can I get back to you or something like that? Okay. Ensure that you are free, right? You don't want to just have to say yes right away and not be able to move things around if the things that you have to move around are kind of set in stone. Okay. Be sure to thank them for the opportunity before you get off the phone with them, right? Super, super important. If HR calls you and you set something up for the 20th, before you get off the phone, hey, I just want to thank you guys so much for the opportunity, and I really look forward to competing for this position come the 20th, right? End that conversation on a positive note, okay? Thank them for the opportunity. After you've agreed to the interview and it's on the 20th and you don't have a dental appointment because your teeth are pearly white, note the time and the place of the interview, right? So you're going to write this down, maybe in your notes somewhere on your phone, wherever it is that you write down important stuff for you to remember, right? Note the time and the place of the interview. And after that, I want you to map the location. Map the location of the interview from where you're at, okay? Or where you'll be leaving at for that interview. You guys know as well as I do that traffic in Southern California is cray-cray, right? And so you might map the location at midnight and be like, 25 minutes, that's cool. And then you might map it at 12 p.m. and you'll be like, 40 hours, right? You'll never get there on time, right? I used to work at West LA College and I used to live in the area. And on a weekend, I kid you not, I would get to my campus 8 miles. I get to my campus in like 10 minutes. During the week, it would take me an hour and 10 minutes. The same drive that would take 8 miles, the same drive that would take me 10 minutes would take me an hour and 10, no matter how sneaky I was in terms of like, oh, I'll use Waze this time. They'll take me a different direction. Didn't matter, right? So map the location, and more importantly, map the location at the time of your interview. So if you know that your interview is a week out, every day map the location at the time of your interview so that you have an idea around that time. What is traffic like, right? You got to account for it. It's super duper important, okay? Lastly, if you can get the name of the person that called you to schedule the interview, it's really, really important, okay? By the way, can I get your name again? Thank you so much. The reason why is this: 9 times out of 10, when you go to, if you have a standard interview where you're going to the company site, the person that greets you when you walk into the office or into the location of the interview is likely the person that called you. And the reason why it's important to get that name is because that's going to give you an opportunity as soon as you get into the building to lessen that anxiety level. Hey, I'm here for the interview for so-and-so position. Hey, are you Brenda? Oh yeah, you called me last week. How's your day going? Yeah, what, right? Gives you an opportunity to kind of start that small talk, get your mouth moving so you get, get some of the wobblies out of your voice. Ow, now, brown cow. The Human Torch was denied a bank loan. Those types of things, right? Get your mouth moving, because interview speech is not necessarily the same as regular speech, right? So get the name of the person who called you so that when you get to the location, you have an opportunity to start talking in the location, speaking with somebody that's a familiar voice, and lessening your anxiety level to be prepared for the interview, okay? Super important. Salary.com is a website that you can use to look up the salary of the position that you are applying for, okay? This is not something that you would look up and then go and speak to about in the interview necessarily, but I think it's really good to give you an idea of a range of, hey, what does somebody in this position normally make? So that if they offer you a position on the spot and you know that you're being lowballed because you've done your homework and you know that on salary.com, people in this position normally make X amount of money, that you can kind of advocate for yourself, okay? The more information that you have going into the interview, the better, okay? All right, interview preparation. Look at all these folks very prepared for the interview. Okay, research the job posting. We've talked about this ad nauseum with the cover letter and the resume, but again, research the job posting. I always encourage you, print it out. If you print it out, you can highlight those action verbs that we talked about in terms of making the resume, but also you kind of build a stack of documents for you to study for the interview, and also for something for you to do once you're in the interview room, okay? I'm gonna explain that a little bit more as we go through this, okay? After you print out the job description, the same way that we're doing this for the resume, you're gonna start connecting how your skills align with the duties and the responsibilities of the position, right? So we're highlighting those action verbs. Hey, I've done that, I've done that, I've done that. I haven't done this, I haven't done this, so maybe these are the things that I don't speak of. These are the things that I focus on, okay? Super important. Know what they're looking for, right? The only way that you can know what they're looking for is by researching this job description. But it's really important to know what they're looking for so you can start aligning how your skills can meet their needs, right? We talked about this in a previous position. If you're really awesome at baking and they're not asking you to bake, then it doesn't matter how awesome you are at baking, right? Because they're not looking for that. Okay, so know what they're looking for so we can kind of position you in terms of making sure that you can fill the needs that they have. Okay, research the company as well, right? Maybe try to see if they're, how many locations they have, right? Where is this location? What's the demographic in that location, right? What's kind of their customer base? The size of the organization? Are they a chain? Right? If they have, hundreds of locations everywhere and it looks like a company that you might want to move up with, then that might be a good thing for you, right? Maybe once you transfer to a 4-year university, if you decide to, and you transfer, either out of state or Northern California or something like that, you can maybe transfer to another location. So just having that in mind, I think, is important and arms you with some information. Okay. We talked about understanding the customer base. Again, the mission statement. Let's know the mission statement, the culture, and the values, right? If this is a company that's aligned with your values and your beliefs, great. If it's not, then maybe this isn't the place for you, right? But giving yourself the opportunity to see if those things matter to you is super important, okay? Reputation, history, again, if that matters to you, it's important to know. If this is a company that's maybe done some questionable things in the community and that's something that's important to you, this isn't a company you want to align yourself with, okay? All right. Interview checklist. So a couple of things that you always want to take to every interview, right? You want to bring a list of your references, okay? In this module, I'm going to post how you would create a reference list and what information that you would put on it, but bring a list of references. You don't necessarily need to give it to you. They may not even ask, but if they do, at least you have it and you're ready, okay? Because we know that references don't go on our resumes anymore, okay? So bring a list of references. A notebook or a notepad, preferably though something like a notebook that opens and closes so that you can store all your documents. What documents are you putting in there? I'm glad you asked, Guidance 3. One, you're going to put additional copies of your resume, which is that third check mark there. You're also going to bring that list of references, but you're also going to bring that printout of the job description so that you can study that, right? The reason why I love this move here is because of this. When you're in the waiting room waiting to interview, and again, keeping in mind that this is if you're interviewing in person, obviously, right? It's very easy to sit there and get extremely nervous and for your anxiety level to go through the roof. Okay, having a notebook with all your stored documents, your resumes, your references, maybe a cover letter, a printout of the job description, it allows you to do something with yourself, with your hands, with your body, to kind of distract your mind and focus on what you need to focus on. So you're not just sitting there thinking about how nervous you are and the sweat that is accumulating in your underarms, but you're thinking about, what do I need to prepare? What do I need to remember in order to lock in and get this interview done the best way I can, right? So it gives you something to do. You can see in this picture that, these three folks here are looking at their documents, right? Super duper important. A pen. I like to be able to do something with my hands because when I'm nervous, I don't know what to do with my hands. So bringing a pen, maybe writing down any particular notes, something to do with your hands, something to just kind of keep you moving, right? Sometimes, depending on the position, they're going to ask for official transcripts. That might not necessarily be, where you all are at right now, but some positions will ask for official transcripts if, you need to have minimally an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree in order to apply for the job, and a work portfolio, again, if needed. If you're looking at maybe a graphic design position, they might say, hey, bring in some of your work so we can see what you're capable of, right? That's why you would bring a work portfolio, okay? Okay, dress code, super important. First, we're going to start off with the men, okay? A suit or a sports jacket, again, it's not a funeral, right? So you don't necessarily have to go, completely, suited and booted, but I think it's important to be professional, right? The overarching theme of this, I think, is this. You will never be penalized for dressing too professionally. You will be penalized for not dressing professionally enough. So for the men in the class, for the fellas, if you're not somebody that likes putting on dress clothes, I understand. I don't necessarily love it either. But again, I think err on the side of caution, better to be, dressed professionally than not, right? So if you don't have a suit, not a problem, put on a sports jacket. If you don't have a sports jacket, not a problem. Just make sure you have a dress shirt on with a tie, okay? Dress socks, super duper important. It is not okay to go in there with dress shoes on and put some Nike ankle socks. That is not going to look appropriate. So make sure that we have some dress socks. If you can borrow some from somebody in your house, go ahead and do that. Other than that, you might be able to get some at like the dollar store or something. Okay. Make sure you got some dress socks on. Fresh shave. If you have facial hair, make sure that you have a fresh shave. If you have a beard, tighten it up a little bit. Just make sure that you look presentable. Okay. No fragrant aftershave or cologne for the fellas, okay? Again, this is all in person, but if you've ever been in an elevator with somebody who is like just poured cologne all over themselves, you understand what kind of attack that is on your nostrils, right? And I want to make sure that when you go into the interview that they're not focused on how sexy you smell, but they're focused on the content of what you're about to deliver for your interview. Okay, so just nothing that is too overbearing. If you showered in the morning, if you put deodorant on and your clothes are clean, you can stand to smell normal for 30 minutes of the interview. And then if you're somebody that likes to bathe in it, you can dunk in it after. Okay. Just make sure that it's nothing too overbearing. Okay. Obviously, got to have deodorant on. Fellas, this isn't something that we always think about. I know I definitely don't, but clean your nails. We're going to be shaking hands, right? Make sure that our hands are relatively manicured so we don't have, a bunch of dirt and grime under there if we do. Don't go in there chewing gum, right? You don't want to go in there chewing gum. If you are somebody that smokes, make sure that, you're not smoking leading up to the interview, and then after you can do whatever it is that you like, right? But, you don't want to go in there smelling like cigarette or anything else that we don't smoke in this class because we're all wonderful students, right? So just make sure that you're clean and you're professional at all times, okay? And this is really important. Another thing that I'll tell you is this: the interview starts when you pull up in the parking lot, okay? A lot of folks think that the interview starts once you get into the room, and that's not necessarily true. The interview starts when you pull into the parking lot. I've been on interview committees before where I've had people pull up in the parking lot, and we've looked through our interview through the window of the office that we're interviewing in, and I've had people ash their cigarettes on the premises, spit their gum out, and kick the gum across the parking lot, and then walk in and try to interview, right? And we're always like, oh, like you can turn around and leave because there's no chance of you getting the job, right? So your interview starts as soon as you pull up in the parking lot. So when you pull up in the parking lot, it's go time. It's professional. It's not okay to be, spitting on the ground or throwing your gum out or you're ashing your cigarette out. It's not okay to be in the waiting room on your phone looking at Twitter or looking at Instagram or something like that, TikTok. Once you're on the premises, it's go time. Okay? It's super duper important. You never know who's around, you never know who's watching, right? And again, you can put your phone down for 35 minutes in order to get the interview, and afterwards you can go back and see how many likes you got on whatever post, right? So again, making sure that as soon as you pull up, you're in interview mode. Okay? And again, fresh breath, if you have some gum beforehand, take it out, put it in a little wrapper, leave it in your car or something like that. Okay. For the ladies, very similar. In terms of shoes, flats, pumps, or maybe moderate heels, really whatever you're comfortable with, right? What I would encourage the ladies not to do is, if you've never wore 6-inch heels before, this might not be the time to try 6-inch heels on the way to the interview, right? I really want you all to be comfortable when you are interviewing and thinking about, again, the content that you are here to deliver and not how uncomfortable your feet are, right? So just whatever you're comfortable in. And again, if you're comfortable in 6-inch heels, then that's fine too. But if you're not, just wear something that's comfortable and professional so that you can worry about the things that you need to worry about, okay? Again, light perfume, if any. We don't want to bathe in it. Clean hair under control. However it is that you all do what you do, I am not a woman, and so I am not here to tell you how to do your hair, but just make sure that it's comfortable and professional, and again, so that you can be comfortable and do what you need to do, okay? Obviously, the same deal: deodorant, clean nails, limited and simple jewelry. This is really important and not something that we think about often, but I know that, like, for example, my wife might wear, 7 or 10 bangles on her arms. And you don't think about how much noise that might make, especially if you're in an interview setting where it's quiet and you're emoting with your hands and they're kind of banging together. And so just, again, limited or simple jewelry. So again, you're not worried about anything else other than what you are there to do. Okay. Again, same deal with the chewing gum or smoking. Just don't do it for that day. Wait until you get out of there and you can go nuts. Okay. And obviously, fresh breath again. Okay. The night before the interview. Okay. A couple of things to be mindful of. Make sure you get as much rest as you need to be at your best. Okay. I'm not going to tell you that you need 7 or 10 because I have no idea how much sleep you need in order to function how you need to function. I'm somebody that doesn't really sleep a ton. And so if I get 6 hours, I'm going to be cool. But if you're somebody that, needs 10 or 12, make sure you get to bed early. Okay. Get as much rest as you need to be at your best for the next day. Okay. The night before, eat something light that night and eat something light at breakfast. I think you know where I'm going with this. The last thing you want to do is be in the elevator on the way up to the 5th floor for your interview, and then your stomach does this. Right? Not the way to do it. If you've never eaten something before and you want to try to eat something exotic, the night before your interview might not be the best night to start. Right? So eat something light at the night before, eat something light at breakfast, so that again, you're not worried about how much your stomach's grumbling. And also it can be like not only like super embarrassing, but just like super distracting, right? Like I've interviewed folks whose stomachs were going nuts and like they get embarrassed and then I don't know what to do. And then everybody's just confused. And then we just cry, right? So again, something like the night before, something like that morning, okay? And then afterwards we can pick out, okay? You want to prepare and organize your materials, right? So that interview checklist, do you have the printout of the job description? Do you have extra copies of your resume or cover letter? Do you have a pen? Do you have something to write with? Do you have something to write on? All of those things. Make sure that they're prepared and ready to go so in the morning you can just worry about putting on that outfit, getting out the door on time, and going and crushing this interview, okay? And leave early. I know that we've already mapped this location because you all are super duper smart. You've mapped it 100 times. You know exactly how long it's going to take you. I would still tell you, if you know that it's only going to take you 45 minutes to get there, give yourself an hour. Give yourself a little bit more time for, something unexpected to pop up. And again, if you think you're going to be late, you're going to call that person that called you, right? You're going to call Shelly at the front desk, say, hey, there was an accident on the 15. I'm running late. Just wanted to let you know. Okay? Super important. Okay, interview day. Your interview starts when you pull up in the parking lot. Okay, so as soon as you get there, it is go time. The phone turns off, the gum is out of your mouth, you're ready to go. You got all your prepared materials in your little storage documents there. Everything's ready to go. Okay, I normally personally show up to interviews about 45 minutes early. I like to look at the space. I like to know where the bathroom is if I need it. I like to get very comfortable in the space. You don't necessarily have to do that. I understand that that's a long time for anybody. And it's also a long time for kind of like anxiety to sit in. But I like to get there early so I get my nerves under control. Okay. But I would encourage you anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes early to give yourself an opportunity to just get comfortable with the space so that you're not worried about it. Okay. Turn your phone off and put it away before entering the building. Okay. I can't tell you how many times I've interviewed folks who thought their phone was off and then it rings. And it's just not professional. Okay. If you are somebody who is a parent and needs to have their phone on in case of emergency, I understand. I would also encourage you to just let them know, let the interviewers know before you start the interview so that they don't think that you're just being rude and inconsiderate of the opportunity. Okay. But again, for most of us, the phone should be off, not on silent. Turn it off. How many times have you thought your phone was on silent and it rang or it buzzed bzz, 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 in the middle of something important? Right? Turn it off. Come back to it when the interview's done. Okay. Greet the receptionist. Again, we have the receptionist name because hopefully that was the person that gave us a call and scheduled the interview for us. So greet the receptionist with a nice firm handshake. Obviously, we want to be polite, not only to whoever the receptionist is, but also if there are other candidates waiting in the waiting room, be polite with everybody, be, pleasant. A lot of the times what will happen is that interviewers will come out after you finish your interview and say, hey, how was he or how was she out here? Were they on their phone? Were they fooling around on their phone all the time? Were they looking at materials? What were they doing? Were they nice? How'd they look? Right? So we want to make sure that, our phone's away, we're looking at our documents, we're focusing in on what we got to do, we're being polite and respectful of everyone. Okay? Sit with good posture while you wait. This isn't the time to, sit there like you don't have any bones in your body, like you're just a big pile of goo, right? Sit up straight, sit with good posture. Again, this is a professional opportunity that we are trying to earn, right? So sit with good posture while you wait. It sounds silly, but it's super important. Again, be confident without being arrogant, right? Be confident without being arrogant, super important. And again, browse through your prepared materials or any literature in the waiting room. A lot of the times what will happen is that when you're in a waiting room, waiting to go in. You're at the front desk. They'll have all kinds of documents and flyers and magazines that are related to the work that they do. If you don't know those things already, you can grab some of that literature and start reading that, because you might get a couple of tips from there that could help you in the interview. Okay, but if not, you're going to browse through your prepared materials that you have in your little stored document list. Okay, prepare, 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 always. Lastly, ask for water. Okay, you can do this both in the waiting room or once you get into the interview room. Couple of different things. Reason one, when you talk a lot, your mouth starts to get gummy. You know what I mean? You get the little white things on the side of your mouth. It's all gross. You got to wipe it off, and then you got to like put it on your jeans or something gross. Ask for water. It's going to happen, right? You're nervous. You're going to be talking a lot. Ask for some water. The other thing that I like to do is ask for water when I'm in the interview room. This is the reason why. When you walk into the interview room, a lot of the times what happens, you say hello to everybody, you maybe shake hands. As soon as you sit down, it's interview time. It doesn't give you a lot of time to get comfortable in the space and get that anxiety level down. So one thing I always do as soon as I walk in, if there is no water, I will say, do you guys mind if I get a glass of water? And what that does is that somebody has to go outside and get it. And that takes 30 seconds, 35 seconds. So it gives me 35 seconds to sit down, breathe, get comfortable in the space, and maybe start cracking a joke or two, or just saying hello to everybody to get my anxiety level down and show them a little bit of my personality, right? It's a good little trick that I encourage you all to use. If there's not water provided, make sure you ask for it. If there is water provided, drink it, use it, right? You don't have to, struggle through this with desert thirst, right? Use the water. It gives you a second to catch your breath, wet your mouth so you can get back into saying what you need to say to earn the position. Okay? Okay. Here's a list of just some common interview mistakes that we all make, right? And just things to be mindful of, right? Number one, we fail to make eye contact. I talked about this when we were talking about the committee interview, right? The time that I had 17 people on my committee. You got to look at everybody, right? Everybody wants to feel like you're talking directly to them. Okay. Secondly, have little knowledge of the company. I've told you before, I think in a previous presentation, where I've had somebody come in for an interview, and one of the questions we asked is, okay, so like, what do you know about our department? And they said, well, I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit about it. Sorry, what? You want me to tell you about the job that you're trying to apply for? Thank you for your time, right? So do your research, right? 38% of us don't smile. This doesn't mean that you have to go in there, killing yourself over jokes, some knee slappers, right? But again, you want to look relatively pleasant. It doesn't mean you have to smile. I know sometimes that can be a little sexist. So, especially for the ladies, it's not something that you have to go in there and smile. But we do want to make sure that we look approachable and that we look pleasant enough to work with. Because again, it's not just about being a good fit for the company. It's for the position. Sorry, it's about being a good fit for the company, right? For the culture. Bad posture, right? So we want to sit up straight in the interview, sit up straight with a confident presence in the waiting room as well. We fidget too much. We always want to make sure that we're mindful of the little kind of quirks and little fidgets that we have. I definitely have some, which is why I think holding a pen and holding your documents is important, because it gives you something to do with your hands, right? When we fidget too much, it can be distracting, and people are looking at what we're doing with our hands and not what's coming out of our mouth, right? Have a weak handshake. Again, I think this one personally is a little bit sexist, but I also, I guess I understand why people think, there's nothing worse than the limp handshake too, right? Both of those things are true, okay? So just a couple of things to kind of be mindful of, okay? In terms of a handshake, this is like a funny little, slide to just kind of like contextualize handshakes, right? This is what I will tell you about handshakes. Nobody remembers a good handshake. Everybody remembers a terrible one, right? If you ever shook someone's hand and it just feels like that limp fish at the top there, like it just feels like, a soggy, like a soggy fish in your hand, everyone's like, ugh, that's not cool. That doesn't feel good. I don't want to do that again, right? Nobody remembers a good handshake. Nobody remembers a good handshake. Everybody remembers a terrible one. So just be mindful. You know, you don't have to go in there and crush the person's hand. It's not a competition, right? That doesn't make you like stronger or in a better position or, you know, asserting dominance or anything like that. But just go in with a mindful handshake, you know, something that's quick and you know, targeted and directed and move on. Okay. All right. Interview day. During the interview, we always want to answer using real life examples if possible. Okay. So if they ask you something about your greatest strength, and they say, James, what's your greatest strength? And you say, collaboration. The best thing to do is to then give real life examples of when you've collaborated. So your answer might sound something like this. Thank you for your question. You know, in terms of my greatest strength, I think my greatest strength is collaboration. In my previous position at X, Y, and Z, I would have to collaborate with this person, and this person in order to get the job done. And we were always able to do that effectively. That is using a real life example to talk about your answer, right? Best as you can, use real life examples. If you do not have a real life example for something, you can give them a scenario, right? You can give them a hypothetical. So you can say, you know, although I never had to communicate with faculty members, you know, in my previous positions, I would have to communicate with folks. And what I would do in this situation is X, Y, Z, right? But you always want to answer using real life examples. And the idea behind that is if they know that you've done this before, they know you can do it again. If they know that you've done this before, they know you can do it again. Okay, super important. Positive nonverbal communication. What is that? Agreeing, nodding your head as they're asking you questions, checking in with them, you know, nonverbally to let them know that you're paying attention, right? So nodding your head. You can even go a little bit, yep, mm-hmm, 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 things like that, right? Really, really important. As best as we can. We talked about this in a previous slide. Let's try to control our tics and other forms of distraction, either for you or the interviewer. I have a really bad problem of like shaking my leg when I'm sitting, right? My wife is always like punching my leg. The way I said that was aggressive. I don't need help or anything, but she's always hitting my leg like, hey, stop, hey, stop, hey, stop. That's absolutely something I do. It's not something that I do when I'm nervous. I just do it. Right? So just being mindful of those things, right? Controlling any tics or any little kind of interesting, unique quirks that you might have that, you know, might be distracting in an interview setting, okay? This is a little tip that I think is really helpful. As best as you can when you're answering questions, try to avoid looking upwards, okay? What I've found is that a lot of folks seem to believe that if you're looking upwards when you're kind of thinking about something, right? You know, when you're thinking about something, you're like, I'm not sure, and you're looking up. Sometimes when you're looking upwards, people can look at that as you're trying to find the answers, right? So if you have to think about something to kind of get your thoughts, you know, gather your thoughts, I would encourage you to look down. When you're looking down, you look a little bit more pensive and a little bit more thoughtful than when you're looking up, looking like, oh God, something fall from the sky and give me an answer, right? So try to avoid looking up when answering questions as best you can, just so you're not looking like you're pulling answers from the sky, okay? So different types of interview questions that you will likely see, okay? General interview questions are often going to be open-ended questions that help the interviewer get a better sense of who you are, okay? In these questions, there's no right or wrong answer. So these are really good opportunities for you to allow your personality to shine. And like we said in the beginning slides, give the interviewer an opportunity to see, you know, who you are outside of work, right? Really, really important. Again, there's no right or wrong. So like take your time with these, right? Take your time with these open-ended general questions that are really just designed to get a better sense of you, right? No right or wrong here, okay? Structured questions focus more on your abilities and qualifications as they relate to the job description. So they might say, how have you communicated and collaborated with others? They might say, what experience do you have that makes you a good fit for this position? That's a structured question that is designed to figure out what you can do and how it relates to what they need. Okay, very different from a general question because there are some things that are more right and less wrong in this area, right? They want to know what you've done in previous positions that will help them, okay? And again, in these questions, whenever they ask you a structured question, this is where we want to use the real life examples as much as we can. What have you done in your previous positions that would help us? Well, looking at the job description, I know that you guys are looking for someone who has X, Y, and Z. And in my previous position, I would often have to do X in this setting. I would often have to do Y in this setting. I would work with these folks over here to do Z in this setting, right? That would be a targeted answer using real life examples for a structured question, okay? And then lastly, situational or behavioral questions, okay? These questions are really designed to focus on how you might solve problems or respond to challenges, right? A lot of times these questions are going to be scenario based. So maybe you've already been in an interview where they ask you this, but sometimes they might say, okay, you are in an office, the phone rings, a customer comes in, and your boss comes in at the same time, and they all need help. Who do you help first, right? And these are really designed to see how you would respond to this challenge, right? A lot of the times in these, there's not necessarily a right or wrong. They just want to see how you think things out and how you process, okay? So situational or behavioral questions focus on how you solve problems and respond to challenges. Oftentimes, they're presented in a scenario based, okay? And again, use real examples as much as possible, right? In that example that I just gave you, I've had people be like, you know what, this actually happens a lot in my previous position, and what I would normally do is this, right? Oftentimes in my normal position, I'd be on the phone responding to an email, a customer would come in, and my boss would ask something of me all at the same time. And these are the steps that I would take to solve each problem, right? So if you can, in a situation behavioral question, feel empowered to use real life examples as much as possible, okay? Wonderful transition, Mr. McLaren. Okay, some things not to do in an interview, okay? Don't do it like my man here says on the right-hand side, okay? Do not show up unprepared for the interview, okay? If you're gonna show up unprepared, it's honestly probably better that you don't show up at all, okay? Do not show up unprepared for an interview, okay? It shows a lack of respect for the folks who are interviewing time, and truthfully, you're not giving yourself the respect that you deserve in terms of the work that you put in to give yourself an opportunity to earn this position, okay? So do not show up unprepared, right? We're going to look at the job description. We're going to make sure that we have all of our documents together. We're going to prepare as best as we can. We're going to go in and we're going to, represent ourselves as well as possible, okay? Do not arrive late. This should not be an issue because we map the location out every single day for, up until the time of the interview, right? If you're going to arrive late, you're going to call the front desk receptionist whose name you got when they first invited you to the interview. You're going to let them know. But it's not okay to just arrive 20 minutes late, not let anybody know, and be like, I'm ready to interview. Okay. And then imagine how frazzled and how, unprepared you're going to feel when you've just, you've run up a couple flight of steps or whatever. You're going in late. You're already nervous. It's just not a great opportunity for you to be successful. Okay. Do not use slang or profanity in any interview. Really, really, really important. This is kind of an interesting one for me, not the profanity part, but the slang, because I think if you're interviewing with somebody who's using slang, I would encourage you to maybe feel, empowered to answer in kind, right? But again, similarly to the dressing professionally, I don't think you'll ever be penalized for not using slang or profanity. You will be penalized for using it. You'll never be penalized for not using it. Right? So again, err on the side of caution. Just don't use it. Right? Don't use slang or profanity, even if there's some words that are, popular amongst your friends that you don't think is really slang. Just avoid it. Right? This is a professional opportunity. We're going to use professional language. Okay? Do not dress inappropriately. Right? You don't want to show up in jeans. You don't want to show up in shorts. Right? You don't want to show up in dress shoes and ankle Nike socks with the Nike check hanging out. Right? Do not dress inappropriately. Respect these folks' time. Respect your time, right? Give yourself this opportunity to be successful, okay? Do not take personal calls or have your cell phone on. Again, if you are a parent, I'm absolutely on the side of, you need to have it for emergencies. But if that's the case, it's incumbent upon you to let them know that you're going to keep this on because maybe you have a kid who is at the doctor's office or needs to be picked up or whatever the case may be, right? I totally understand and respect that, but make sure that you let them know, okay? Do not bring up personal matters or issues. Again, we want to use real life examples as much as we can to make sure that we, are advocating for ourselves in terms of showing our abilities, but we don't want to bring up anything personal that might give them an opportunity to not consider you for the position, right? So what do I mean by that? I've had people come in and tell me, they're really interested in this job, but they have a mother or a parent that is sick and they're also taking care of them. They don't need to know that right now. If they like you enough, they will work something out with you to make your schedule work, and they'll work something out so that you can still take care of your family member. Okay? But that's not something that they need to know at this stage of the game. Okay? Your job is to go in there, advocate for yourself, put on for yourself, and go get this job. Okay? So they don't need to know that you have a family member who's sick that you take care of. They don't need to know that you have a child who, maybe has medical issues at the moment. It doesn't matter it's not important right now for them to know that. Okay, it obviously matters. It just doesn't matter in this setting. They don't need to know that. We don't want to give them a reason to not consider you. Okay, and that shouldn't be something that they do anyways. But again, crazier things have happened, and discrimination is something that happens. Okay, you don't want to criticize former employers. Super important. A lot of times, what they'll ask you, interview question that they'll ask you is, why are you leaving your last job? And even if you had the worst boss ever, what you don't want to say is, because my boss was the worst. Okay? The reason why you don't want to say that is because you don't want to talk negatively about anybody. But secondly, they're going to be like, well, if you're speaking about your previous boss like that, then there's a good chance you're going to speak about me like that when you leave here, right? So never, never, never criticize former employers, right? If they ask you a question about why you left your previous position, I think the smart thing to always do is to be like, focus on your growth. I just didn't feel like I was learning as much as I wanted to. I felt like I kind of reached my ceiling and I was looking for an opportunity to grow. And I think I have that opportunity here. Boom, I start on Monday, right? Never criticize former employers, okay? Super duper important. Closing the interview, okay? Some last things to do. Ask questions. We talked about this. The interview will always end with, do you have any questions for us? And again, 9 times out of 10, we run out of the room. We run out of the room, we run into our cars, we turn our phones on, and we're like, finally, that's over, right? But ask questions, right? Couple of good questions that you might want to ask, because I know sometimes I've worked with students who are like, I don't know what I'm supposed to ask. I think a really easy question to ask is, what are some of your challenges here? What are some of your biggest challenges that you guys have in this department, in this office, in this company? One, it's just a nice, easy question to ask. But two, I think it positions you to try to figure out how you can fix that problem. If you have any skills that can help plug that hole, right? So if they say, well, our biggest problem is really outreach, we're not able to reach enough folks, and you have experience in outreach, you can start going, aha, well, then that's how I can help. That's how I can add value to this company, right? That's how I can add value in this position, okay? Another question that folks ask is, tell me a little bit about how you guys got in this career, right? Same with the informational interview. People love talking about themselves, right? I do it every single week with you guys, right? So yeah, how did you guys get into this career, right? How do you, what do you guys like about this? What don't you like about this? Give them an opportunity. And again, this puts you in the driver's seat. Now you are the interviewer and they are the interviewee, okay? So ask questions, really, really important. Ask questions, okay? You always want to end it on a positive note. The beginning of the interview and the end of the interview are really what people remember. So when you're walking in and you ask for that water, it's really important that you greet everybody pleasantly. You shake hands, you look pleasant, you look, so like somebody that you want to work with. And when you leave, you thank them for the opportunity, you shake everybody's hand. Really looking forward to hearing back from you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Okay? Super important. Shake everybody's hand. Again, this is obviously pertaining to a standard interview where you're on site. But again, as best as you can, shake everybody's hand. If you're doing something online, say goodbye to each person, right? With that firm handshake, you don't want to put that limp fish in their hand, right? Ask for a business card. Again, this is pertaining to being in person, but always ask for a business card. I think that's really, really great. And the reason why is it allows you to send your thank you email. It allows you to send that follow-up email. That follow-up email is so, so important, okay? Just consider this with me for a second. If you are on an interview committee and you've interviewed 15 people today, it's very easy to forget some of them. There's no chance that you're going to remember all 15, which is why a lot of the times if you're in an interview, people will be taking notes because they're trying to write down the things that made you stand out. Many times that I've been in an interview, I remember the first person, I remember the last person, and person number 3, 2 through 14, I'm like, I don't remember, right? But this gives you an opportunity to remind them. So if you're number 4 or 5, or you're right in the middle, right, of like 14, you're like the 7th person, and you send that follow-up email, hey, my name is Brent McLaren, and I just wanted to reach out and thank you all for the opportunity to interview with you last Tuesday. I really enjoyed meeting you all and really look forward to hearing back from you. Send. That is a reminder for them to be like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. He said this, this, this. He made that one joke that was hilarious. He was the most handsome man I've ever seen in my life, whatever the case may be, right? It gives you an opportunity to be memorable. So when you ask for that business card will likely have an email on it, and that's what you will use to send that follow-up email, okay, that thank you email. Super important, okay? After the interview, we're going to send those emails, like we said, to the entire committee. So if it's a committee, if there's 17 people are going to get an email. If it's only one, you just send that one email to the person, right? The second thing that I would encourage you to do is this. As soon as you get back to your car after the interview, you turn your phone on, obviously, and look at all the likes you just got because you're the most popular. But in your notes section of your phone, or maybe when you brought a pen and something to write with, you want to write down every single question that they asked you. Every single question that you remembered in that interview, I want you to write it down, okay? And then what you're going to be able to do is to collect a list of the most common interview questions so that you can prepare your answers for the next opportunity that arises, okay? Oftentimes, interview questions are going to be very similar across, a lot of different jobs. As you get more specialized, they're going to ask you, more specific things. But for the most part, a lot of interview questions are same, right? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about your experience. What's your greatest strength? What's your greatest weakness? Have you ever dealt with, a customer who was unhappy? Have you ever had to deal with a faculty member or a colleague that was unhappy, right? How would you respond in this situation? A lot of questions are really, really similar. So once you leave the interview and you get back to your car and your anxiety's coming down and you're feeling good, write down every question that they asked you so you can start creating a list, right? A living document, a working document that you'll continuously add to study from, okay? Super important. If you're comfortable, some folks will also email and request feedback on the interview, okay? This is usually done after a decision's been made and you have not been selected, right? So you don't want to ask for feedback if you haven't heard back. But if you've heard back and they said, hey, you know what, we decided to go a different way, not a problem. You can ask for feedback and say, hey, thank you so much for the opportunity. Again, as I'm trying to strengthen my interview skills, I was hoping you could maybe provide me with some feedback as to my interview, right? And some folks, not all, but some folks will be happy to say, hey, you did a great job at this, but you weren't as strong here, and that might be something to work on for whatever your next interview opportunity is, okay? So if you're comfortable, you can do that. Again, you don't necessarily have to, but I think as you're learning and as you're growing and you're building this skill, it's worth your time to send it, okay? For this week, we're gonna have this. We have this presentation, obviously. I'm also gonna post some common interview questions just so you can have that document in terms of start thinking about, how would you answer these questions. Next week, we're going into our review for the final. I'll have another presentation for you all then. It's going to be, I'm not going to do the video of it. I'm going to do it in a PowerPoint so that you have a document that you can complete the final with. Again, the final is going to be open book, so you can use that PowerPoint presentation. There will not be anything on the PowerPoint, or sorry, anything on the final that would not be given to you on the PowerPoint. So that PowerPoint is really going to be, your best friend as it relates to trying to get this exam done. Okay. Let's have another great week. Thank you all. I hope you all had a wonderful weekend, and let's have a great week. Bye.